You already know it doesn't matter anymore, at least on the surface, because the moment has passed and the situation is over. Yet your mind keeps returning to it, as if something about it is still unfinished. It doesn't come back because you choose to think about it, and it doesn't ask for your permission. It just appears in quiet moments, late at night, or in between tasks. And for a few seconds it feels just as real as it did when it first happened. That's the part that makes it confusing, because logically you've moved on. But mentally, something is still holding on. Most people assume this means the event itself is still important. But that's not actually what's happening. Because your mind doesn't replay things based on their current relevance. It replays things based on whether or not they have been resolved internally. And resolution doesn't come from time. It comes from how the experience was processed. If something happened and you fully understood it, accepted it, and let it settle, it fades naturally. But if something happened and left behind tension, confusion, or a shift in how you see yourself, then it doesn't close properly. It stays active. That's why the memories that return are almost never your best ones. Because your mind doesn't need to revisit what already makes sense. It goes back to what still feels incomplete. Moments where you said something wrong, or acted in a way that didn't match who you believe you are, or felt exposed in a way you weren't prepared for. Those are the ones that linger. Not because they matter now, but because they created a reaction that never fully settled. And what your mind is actually replaying is not just the event, it's the feeling that came with it. That's the real anchor. Because the memory itself is just a trigger, but underneath it there's something else. Something that feels unresolved. Something that your mind keeps trying to make sense of. It might be embarrassment, or regret, or a subtle sense that you were seen in a way you didn't want to be seen. And that feeling gets tied to the moment so tightly that every time the memory comes back, the feeling comes with it. And that's why it doesn't fade. Because it's not being stored as something finished. It's being stored as something that still needs attention. So your mind keeps bringing it back, not to annoy you, but to try and close the loop. The problem is that it's using the same strategy every time. It replays the moment. It reanalyzes what happened. It tries to figure out what you should have said or done differently. But no matter how many times it runs through that process, it never actually resolves anything. Because you can't change the past from the present. So the loop continues. And the more you engage with it, the more familiar it becomes. And the more familiar it becomes, the more automatic it feels. At a certain point, it stops feeling like something you're doing and starts feeling like something that's happening to you. But there's another layer to this that the most people don't notice. And it's the reason why some memories stick longer than others. It's not just about what happened. It's about what you made it mean. Because in the moment, you didn't just experience something. You interpreted it. You turned it into a conclusion about yourself, or about how other people see you, or about what that situation says about your identity. And that meaning is what your mind is actually holding on to. So when the memory comes back, it's not just replaying an event. It's reinforcing a belief. It might be subtle, but it's there. A sense that you're not good enough in some way, or that you messed something up, or that you revealed something you didn't want to reveal. And every time the loop runs, that meaning gets strengthened. That's why it feels harder to let go than it should. Because letting go of the memory would also mean letting go of the conclusion attached to it. And your mind doesn't do that easily. So instead, it keeps the loop active. Now, this is where most people make the mistake that keeps the pattern going. They try to stop the thought. They distract themselves, or push it away, or tell themselves it's pointless and shouldn't be there. But the more you try to get rid of a thought, the more attention you give it. And attention is what tells your mind that something matters. So even though your intention is to move on, the signal you're sending is the opposite. You're telling your mind that this is important. And your mind responds by bringing it back more often. Not because it's working against you, but because it's following the pattern you're reinforcing. This is why the loop feels so persistent. Because it's not just the original memory anymore. It's the reaction to the memory that's keeping it alive. Every time it appears and you tense up, or try to escape it, or mentally argue with it, you're adding another layer of importance. And that keeps the cycle going. So the shift doesn't come from forcing the thought to stop. It comes from changing how you respond when it appears. When the memory comes up, instead of immediately getting pulled into it, you take a step back and notice what's actually happening. Not the story itself, but the process. You notice that your mind is replaying something. And more importantly, you notice the feeling underneath it. Because that's what's driving the loop. Not the details of what happened, but the emotional response that hasn't fully settled. And when you stop trying to avoid that feeling and just let it be there without reacting to it, something begins to change. It doesn't disappear instantly, but it loses intensity. Because you're no longer reinforcing it with resistance. You're allowing it to exist without feeding it. And over time, that changes how your mind categorizes it. It stops seeing it as something urgent. It stops marking it as something that needs to be revisited. And when that happens, the loop starts to weaken. This is not about ignoring the past. And it's not about pretending it didn't happen. It's about removing the need to keep revisiting it. Because once the emotional charge is gone, the memory has nothing to hold on to. And when there's nothing holding it in place, it fades naturally. Not because you forced it to go away, but because it no longer serves a purpose. And the moment that used to replay over and over again becomes just another memory. Something that happened, but doesn't carry weight anymore. Because in the end, it's not the past that keeps coming back. It's the part of you that hasn't fully processed it yet. And once that part settles, the mind stops returning to it. Not because you told it to stop, but because it no longer needs to.